My stepmother raised a champagne flute and stole my microphone. 40 guests smiled while my father stared down at linen. She said I was adopted for benefits, not love, ever. My promotion dinner turned into her stage, her little trial. Jenna filmed grinning, ready to slice my reaction for reels. I didn't flinch. My laptop bag sat against my chair. Inside was a fraud case number and a notary log. If you love family drama with receipts, subscribe for more. Tell me your city and local time. Where are you watching? Because tonight I'm about to make her run in heels. Patricia's smile held, but her eyes searched for my collapse. I set my napkin down like I was in a meeting, not a spotlight. Thank you for sharing that, I said, voice steady. Since we're doing honesty, let's include the bank. A murmur rolled across the table. Patricia laughed too loud. Myra, don't be dramatic. I slid my phone out, screen glowing with a red banner. Credit alert, new inquiry. Under it, home equity line pending. 72 hours left. I'd frozen my credit that morning, yet someone still tried using my name, my address, my social like a skeleton key again. 1 month earlier, I was still learning how to celebrate myself. The promotion email from HR hit at 9:06 a.m., and my manager pinged me all caps, "Congrats." I bought myself takeout that night and ate it over spreadsheets because that's what adulthood looks like when you grew up auditioning for approval. Then Patricia texted the family thread, "We're honoring Myra at the Harbor Club. Black tie optional." Optional from a woman who judged sneakers like sins. It felt generous. It felt wrong. My father added a thumbs up emoji and Jenna replied with a camera icon like I was content. 2 days after that text, I noticed my mail was light. No utility insert, no coupon flyers, nothing. I checked USPS informed delivery on my break and saw an image I never received, a thick envelope from Bay State Federal. I drove by my parents' house after work, pretending I'd left a scarf. The mailbox had a new lock. Patricia met me at the door, blocking the hall. "We've been getting junk," she said. Her voice was sweet. Her eyes were sharp. My scarf was on the hook, untouched like bait. That night, I changed every password and turned on alerts. A week later, Patricia invited me for Sunday coffee. She set out pastries, the good kind, and slid a folder across the counter. "Just updates," she said. "Insurance, emergency contacts, boring adult stuff." I flipped pages and saw the phrase that made my stomach drop, "power of attorney." My hand hovered. "Why is this here?" Patricia laughed airy. "In case something happens. You're so busy now." Busy. Like that was a weakness. I closed the folder. "I'll have my attorney review it." Her smile cracked just a hair. She reached for my wrist, then thought better and pulled back slowly. 3 days after that, my bank app showed a welcome message for a line of credit I never opened. I called. The rep asked security questions, then said quietly, "Ma'am, we have a signed authorization." An email arrived while we spoke a PDF with my name typed under a scribble that tried to be my signature. My hands went cold, but my mind went clear. I forwarded it to Lucas at work. He didn't gasp. He just said, "Freeze your credit, right now, then request the audit trail." I did it from my car engine running, sweating on the wheel. The audit trail came back messy submissions from an IP address tied to a co-working space across town and a notary stamp number listed on the document. I Googled the stamp and found an office above a nail salon. The receptionist recognized Patricia's name before I finished saying it. "She's been here," the woman admitted, then clamped her mouth shut. "I didn't push. I just asked for the notary's logbook entry tied to that stamp. We can't release without a subpoena," she said. "You might want to get one." Her eyes flicked to the camera. That flick was everything. All of it sat on my hard drive, backed up twice. So when Patricia lifted the mic, she was playing a game I'd already mapped. "Say it again," I said. Her chin rose. "You were adopted for the deduction." A few guests laughed, then stopped. I tapped my phone and put Bay State Federal on speaker right then. "Fraud department," a man answered. The room went still. Patricia's knuckles whitened on the microphone. "This is Myra," I said. "Confirm was a HELOC started under my identity." He answered, calm and clear. "Yes, and we flagged it as suspicious." Jenna's camera dipped right then. Patricia recovered fast. "This is a misunderstanding," she sang, too cheerful. "We'll discuss it privately." She shot my father a look. He stayed folded over his plate. I kept my voice calm, the one I use on difficult clients. "No," I said. "You wanted witnesses." I opened my laptop. "The bank assigned a fraud case ID," I continued, "and the authorization carries a notary stamp number." Patricia's smile twitched. "So let's call the notary and ask who presented it." Someone near the window muttered, "That sounds like forgery." Patricia stepped back, heels scraping marble. Jenna stopped recording, started again, trembling. I dialed the notary office I'd saved ago. A woman answered, clipped. I put her on speaker. I'm reviewing stamp 44178 from last Tuesday, I said. Did Patricia Anderson bring paperwork to your office that day? Silence. Ma'am, we can't discuss clients, she finally said. No problem, I replied. Then preserve your log entry and hallway video. My attorney will subpoena it. Patricia made a sharp sound like air leaving a tire. Someone at the table murmured hallway video. The notary's voice dropped. Why would you need that? I looked at Patricia. Because my signature was forged. And I know. That's when my father finally lifted his head. His face had gone gray, like he'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Pat, he said, quiet but carrying stop. Patricia turned on him, shocked. Richard, don't. He swallowed. I saw the folder on your desk, he admitted, eyes wet. The room held its breath. Jenna's mascara was already starting to streak. Patricia tried to laugh, but it came out thin. I didn't celebrate my father's words. 30 years late still counts as late. But hearing him speak changed the physics of the room. Patricia was no longer the only adult standing. I eased my laptop shut and faced the room Patricia had curated for control. You called me a benefit, I said, but you've been trying to profit off my identity. Her mouth opened, then closed. I pulled one page from my bag, a printed email header with full routing lines. Before anyone leaves, I added, you should know the HELOC wasn't her first move. Patricia went still. Jenna stopped breathing. My father's hand tightened around his water glass. I lifted the page higher so the closest guests could read it. The subject line was highlighted in yellow, re-guardianship options urgent. 2 weeks before that dinner, my life was boring in the best way. I was at my desk before sunrise, coffee cooling beside the keyboard when HR's email hit promotion approved. I stared like it was meant for someone else. After 15 years of proving I wasn't extra baggage, I'd finally made senior project manager. My phone buzzed with a Slack message from my boss, proud of you. I saved the screenshot the way some people save love letters, then went right back to work. At lunch, I bought a cupcake, ate it, and told myself not to get sentimental. That evening, I called my dad, expecting his usual distracted congratulations. He cleared his throat, said good job, and asked if I'd checked the oil in my car. Then Patricia jumped on the line, bright as a radio host. We're doing something special, she said. You deserve to be celebrated properly. My stomach tightened. In 38 years, she'd never used the word deserve about me. She'd used words like grateful, lucky, and burden, sometimes without moving her lips. I kept my voice even. What are you planning? She paused, enjoying suspense, then named Harbor Club like it was a coronation. Within minutes, a calendar invite arrived, sent from Patricia's personal email, complete with a gold banner image and a note about attire. Black tie, optional, but I knew optional meant required in her world. She added a guest list in the message, body names of her garden club friends, my dad's business partners, and 2 people from my company I barely knew. She'd even CC'd Jenna, who replied with a camera emoji and can't wait. I stared at my screen the way you stare at a trap you can't yet describe and clicked accept anyway, because some part of me hoped. Saturday, I went shopping after work, still wearing my ID badge because I didn't trust myself with splurges. Under fluorescent lights, I held a navy dress against my body and heard Patricia's old commentary in my head. Too tight, too plain, too much like you're trying. The sales associate smiled and said it fit my shoulders perfectly. I bought it anyway, then sat in my car with the bag on the passenger seat, breathing slowly until my hands stopped shaking. Celebrations weren't neutral for me. They were auditions with penalties. And Patricia kept score even when she pretended she didn't. On Monday, my phone chimed with a notification from USPS Informed Delivery. I opened it between meetings and saw a scanned image of an envelope addressed to me stamped Bay State Federal. I never found it in my mailbox. That night, I walked down the hall of my apartment building twice, pretending I'd forgotten trash, checking the mailroom like a thief. Nothing. I told myself it was a mistake, a missort, anything normal. Then I remembered Patricia's sudden party and felt my throat tighten. Normal wasn't the family brand. I screenshot the scan and saved it to a folder labeled House. Tuesday, I drove to my parents' place with the excuse of returning a casserole dish. Patricia met me before I reached the porch too fast, like she'd been watching from behind the curtain. A new metal box sat by the door with a padlock where the old mailbox used to be. We've been getting identity theft junk, she said lightly. Better safe than sorry. I asked if anything for me had arrived. Her smile didn't move. Just catalogs. Inside, my scarf hung exactly where I'd left it months ago. The house felt staged like a listing. Even the air smelled rehearsed. That night, I sat on my couch with my laptop open and my dinner cooling untouched. I changed my banking password, then my email, then my employee portal, then anything that held a hint of my life. 2-factor authentication codes flashed like alarms. I set up credit monitoring and placed a fraud alert, feeling ridiculous and grown at the same time. Lucas texted asking if I was coming to our Thursday check-in, and I replied yes, because work still demanded normal. But as I typed, I watched my fingers like they belonged to someone who understood danger could be polite. Thursday morning, Patricia called and asked me to come by for coffee like we were girlfriends, like the last decade hadn't been a series of tiny cuts. She had pastries on a plate, the expensive kind, and a folder waiting beside my mug. Just housekeeping, she said. Emergency contacts insurance, things adults do. I flipped the first page and saw the phrase power of attorney buried in paragraph 4. My pulse thudded. Why would you need this? I asked. Patricia's smile stayed put. Because you're busy now, she said, soft as poison. I closed folder and slid it across counter. Her eyes sharpened just for a second, then she laughed like I'd told a joke. You're being paranoid, she said. It's standard. I kept my hands folded in my lap the way I do in performance reviews. Then my attorney will confirm it's standard, I replied. The room went quiet except for the refrigerator hum. Patricia leaned forward, lowering her voice. Don't embarrass me, she warned, as if my boundaries were rude behavior. She reached for my wrist, then stopped herself, fingers hovering in the air like a threat that wanted deniability. I stood, thanked her for coffee, and left. Friday afternoon, while I was on a Zoom call with a client, my phone lit up again. Bay State Federal, welcome to your new home equity line. My chest tightened and I had to mute myself, pretending my connection lagged. When the call ended, I dialed the bank and asked for the fraud department. The representative sounded tired, like he'd said this script all week. We received an authorization with your signature, he told me. An email arrived while we spoke, a PDF with my name typed beneath a scribble. It wasn't my handwriting. It was close enough to fool strangers. I forwarded the PDF to Lucas with no explanation, just the subject line, "Is this forgery?" he called fast. Freeze your credit, he said, like he was reading a checklist. Place a fraud alert, request the audit trail, and get an attorney on standby. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the dress bag hanging in closet. The Harbor Club dinner was a week away. Patricia wasn't celebrating me. She was setting a stage. Lucas lowered his voice. If you walk in there, don't go in empty-handed. I opened folder on my laptop and named it Evidence. By Sunday, I had receipts stacked in a manila envelope, but the idea of dinner made my throat tighten. I could skip it, claim a migraine, keep my peace. Then I heard Patricia's warning in my head, don't embarrass me. She didn't fear my absence, she feared my voice. I checked my report again and saw another inquiry queued for morning. Someone was moving fast. I set my alarm, slid the envelope into my laptop bag, and taped a note to the zipper, "Do not trust the stage." As I reached for the lamp, my phone rang unknown Boston number again. The next morning I drove to work with my stomach in a knot. In the elevator, my phone flashed another informed delivery scan, a second Bay State envelope, this one marked time sensitive. Again, nothing showed up in my building's mailroom. I opened my apartment door that night and found a sticky note on the mat, wrong unit, sorry. No envelope, just a polite lie. Patricia's party invite sat, starred in my calendar, glittering like a trophy, and I suddenly saw it as camouflage. Someone was touching my life through the smallest cracks, and they were doing it with perfect manners. At lunch, I called USPS and asked about my address. The agent sounded bored until I read the tracking numbers from the scans. Then she paused and said, "There's a change of address order on file." My throat tightened. I hadn't filed one. The order redirected my mail to a P.O. box across town. When I asked when it started, she gave a date the same day Patricia sent the Harbor Club invite. I hung up and sat in my car, hands on the wheel, listening to the turn signal click like a metronome for panic. I knew then this wasn't coincidence. That evening, I drove to my father's house and parked a block away like I was casing my own childhood. I walked up with my keys visible, trying to look casual. Patricia opened the door before I knocked. "What's wrong?" she asked too quickly. I told her the post office said my mail was being forwarded. She blinked once, then smiled. "Oh, that," she said. "We fixed it. Identity theft is everywhere." Behind her, I saw the locked mailbox and a stack of envelopes on the entry table face down. My name was on the top one in ink. I reached for the envelope and Patricia slid sideways, body language polite but absolute. "Don't worry about it," she said. "I'll sort it." I asked to see it anyway. Her smile tightened again, the tiniest tell. "You're stressed," she whispered, as if concern could erase control. My father's voice drifted from the den sports on TV, not once calling my name. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the pile. Patricia's hand shot out, stopping inches from my screen, then froze, remembering there were witnesses, me and her own reflection in the glass door. Eyes daring me. Back home, I called Bay State again and demanded the submission history. The fraud specialist emailed a summary application, started online documents, uploaded e-sign attempt failed, then paper authorization delivered in person. An IP address appeared beside the first upload. When I searched it, it traced to a co-working space downtown one Jenna had posted about last month, cute place to edit content. My stomach flipped. I didn't accuse her, not yet. I just saved the PDF, printed it, and wrote the date in red marker. The paper felt heavier than it should, like it carried fingerprints. And it wasn't just one. The next day, another inquiry hit my credit file, this time from a title company. That was the moment fear turned into math. A title company meant property. Property meant the condo I'd bought with my savings, the one Patricia liked to call your little place. I logged into the credit bureau portal and slammed the freeze button, then called an attorney whose name Lucas texted me. She didn't sound surprised. She asked, "Do you have evidence of mail diversion?" I emailed the informed delivery scans. "Good," she said. "Now we build a trail they can't talk their way out of." The forged PDF included a notary stamp number in the corner, tiny but loud, to anyone who'd signed a closing document. I Googled it and found Harbor Notary Services above a nail salon beside a vape shop. I went on my lunch break pretending I needed an affidavit. The receptionist glanced at the stamp and said before she could stop herself, "Oh, that's Miss Anderson's usual." My throat tightened. "Which Anderson?" I asked. She lifted her eyes, realized the slip, and the room's friendliness snapped shut like a door. I thanked her, walked out, and sat on the curb, shaking. Before I left, I asked carefully if they kept a logbook for stamp 44178. The receptionist's face hardened with training. "We do," she said, "but we don't release entries without a subpoena." Then her gaze flicked involuntarily to a camera in the hallway. It was a small movement, but it told me everything. I nodded like I was ignorant, thanked her, and walked back to my car. In the rearview mirror, my eyes looked older. I called my attorney and said, "I have the stamp number and they have video." She replied, "Good. Now we set the trap." At dinner. All week, I functioned like nothing was happening. I led meetings, answered emails, pretended to care about formatting in a deck, while my brain ran two tracks, work and war. At night, I built my evidence folder the way Patricia built centerpieces controlled impossible to ignore. Screenshots of mail scans, dates circled in red, credit inquiries saved as PDFs, the bank's case notes, a timeline on a legal pad. Lucas insisted I back it up to a second drive. "If she gets your laptop," he warned, "she'll try to erase you." I packed my bag anyway. I refused to arrive empty. The day of the Harbor Club dinner arrived with sunlight and a knot behind my ribs. I wore the navy dress, pinned my badgeless jacket, and checked my purse 3 times, keys, phone charger, lipstick. Then I checked the laptop bag, hard drive printed, timeline bank, case ID, and the informed delivery screenshots. I felt ridiculous, like a spy in heels. In the parking garage, I sat for a minute breathing, repeating a line my attorney said, "Stay calm, let them perform, you collect." When I walked into the club, Jenna was there, phone angled toward the doorway, smile ready. Inside, everything was polished enough to hide intent, white linens light the harbor beyond the glass. Patricia hugged me with stiff arms. "There's my star," she said loud enough for half the room. My father offered a brief handshake and drifted away in conversation with one of his partners. Jenna hovered near the wall, phone held high, recording my entrance. Patricia steered me to a chair with a ribbon on the back like I'd been tagged for display. I scanned the guests and realized most weren't mine. They were her witnesses. Beside the windows, a microphone waited on a stand. Under the table, I checked the fraud portal again. The title inquiry still sat there, time-stamped proof someone had been working while I tried to be polite. I looped my laptop bag strap around my ankle. Across the room, Patricia tapped the microphone, and the chatter softened on cue. She smiled at me like a mother and stared like a warden. My phone buzzed unknown number. A text preview flashed. "If you want the originals, meet me tonight. Come alone." I kept my face still, but my pulse answered. And as she began speaking, I realized this wasn't her first move. Patricia's voice floated over the room, sweet and sharp, while my phone buzzed again under the table. Unknown number. The preview read, "If you want the originals, meet me tonight. Come alone." I kept my face neutral, but my pulse hit my ribs like a warning. Originals meant the real authorization, the real notary log, maybe the forwarding form. Someone was nervous. Someone wanted leverage. I slipped the phone into my lap, typed where, and deleted the message draft before sending. Then I raised my eyes and watched Patricia smile for her audience as if she had won the case. She spoke about family, gratitude, sacrifice, all the things she used as ropes. She reminded the guests how she took me in and made me who I am. Jenna's camera light blinked like a tiny siren. I kept my hands folded, shoulders relaxed like I was listening to a quarterly report. Inside, I was inventorying exits and evidence. The bank case number sat open on my screen behind a password. The notary stamp number was written on a sticky note in my wallet. Patricia loved applause. I loved documentation. And tonight, for once, I would not trade one for peace. After the call with the fraud specialist, I asked my attorney, Marlene Ortiz, what a forged POA could do. She didn't sugarcoat it. It can let someone refinance, open credit, even try to sell property if other people are careless, she said. She told me to request every version of every document. Forgery leaves seams, she promised. That night, I printed the PDF and examined it under my desk lamp. The signature looked like mine, but the pressure points were wrong. The loops were hesitant. It was my name written by someone angry who expected me to stay quiet forever. Marlene taught me to look past the ink. Check the metadata, she said. I opened the file properties and my stomach flipped. Created date Tuesday 2/1 p.m. While I was in a meeting at work. Modified date Tuesday 2/4 p.m. The author field showed a name I recognized from Jenna's Instagram captions, a co-working account she tagged in photos. My hands shook, but my mind stayed cold. I took screenshots of every detail, then emailed them to myself and Lucas and Marlene. 3 copies. No excuses. Patricia couldn't erase a trail that lived in 3 inboxes and an external drive. I didn't confront Jenna. I didn't confront Patricia. Confrontation was what they wanted because it created noise. Noise made people forget facts. Instead, I called Bay State and asked for the wet signature version, the paper that was supposedly notarized in person. The fraud specialist sighed and said it was already in review, but he could tell me the receiving branch. It was 10 minutes from my parents' house. I drove there after work, sat in the parking lot, and watched people come and go like life. Then I walked inside and asked for a copy of my betrayal in writing. The branch manager met me in a glass office and spoke in the careful tone people use when they suspect you are a victim. I slid the PDF across the desk and pointed at the stamp number. This was notarized. Where is the journal entry? I asked. He blinked, then admitted, we don't keep the journal. The notary does. He typed, frowned, and said the paper had been hand-delivered by a family representative. He wouldn't name her. He didn't have to. My attorney's business card made his shoulders drop. He promised to freeze anything tied to my identity immediately. On the drive home, Jenna called. I let it ring twice, then answered because silence can be useful. Why are you harassing Mom? She snapped. I put her on speaker and hit record legal in my state with one-party consent, something Marlene had made me confirm. I'm not harassing anyone, I said. Someone filed a change of address and forged my signature for a loan. Jenna laughed too quick. You always make things about you. Then she added, Mom's just trying to protect the family, protect it from what she went quiet, and in that quiet, I heard guilt breathing on air. That night, the unknown number texted again with an address, a gas station off Route 910, under the bright lights by Pump 6. It sounded like a bad movie, which meant it might be real. I showed Lucas. He didn't lecture me. He just said, don't go alone. I told him I wouldn't. I told Marlene too. She advised I bring a witness and keep it public. So I drove there with Lucas in a second car, my heart thumping, my hands steady. I parked where cameras could see my license plate and waited with the windows locked. A man in a reflective vest approached, not a criminal mastermind, just a tired employee with a clipboard. He looked at me like he regretted being here. You, Myra? He asked. I nodded. He handed me a folded form, the post office forwarding request, and a copy of the notarized authorization, both stamped. I was told to drop these in your box, he murmured, but your stepmom paid cash and said you'd freak out. My jaw tightened. Did she sign? I asked. He hesitated, then said, she signed for you and the notary didn't even look up. He walked away. Back in my car, I photographed every page, then slid the originals into a plastic sleeve like evidence because they were. The forwarding form carried Patricia's handwriting and the contact line neat and confident. The loan authorization referenced a POA I had refused to sign, yet it claimed I had granted it voluntarily. Lucas texted from across the lot. "You okay?" I typed. "I'm focused." At home, I built a timeline and added 4 words at the top. "Let her humiliate me." Then I wrote the line beneath it, "I will not disappear." Next week, microphone would meet my receipts. That night, Marlene called after reviewing the scans. "The forwarding request is fraudulent," she said, "and the notary stamp matches the bank file. We can subpoena the journal and hallway footage." Her voice stayed calm, but I heard steel underneath. "Stop trying to win their hearts," she warned. "Win the timeline." I stared at my father's contact and didn't dial. I wasn't ready for excuses. Instead, I wrote 3 rules on a sticky note and taped it to my laptop. Calm voice. Slow pace. Facts only. Then I set 1 reminder for the Harbor Club, bring backups and keep receipts. Lucas offered to role-play the worst case. We sat in a conference room after hours, fluorescent lights humming, and he played Patricia with accuracy. "After all we did for you," he said, hand on his chest, fake tears ready. I practiced answering without pleading. "I appreciate what was provided," I said, "and I am addressing fraud." Again and again until my voice stopped shaking. Then Lucas switched roles and played a nosy guest, a sympathetic aunt, a banker. Each time I returned to the same anchor, dates, documents, case number stamp. "You're ready," Lucas said. "Not to fight, to stand." That afternoon, the unknown number texted once more. "Don't name me. Use the originals." I didn't reply. I printed my timeline, slid the documents into my laptop bag, and looped the strap around my ankle. In the mirror, I looked calm, but my jaw was set. At the Harbor Club, Patricia kissed my cheek for show. Jenna's phone was already recording. My father's handshake was limp. The microphone waited beside the windows. Patricia tapped it, smiled at her guests, and said my name like an announcement. Under the table, I touched the plastic sleeve and reminded myself facts first always. By the time I got home from the gas station drop, my hands were steady and my stomach was not. I laid everything on my kitchen table like a forensic tech. The forwarding form, the notarized authorization, the bank summary, and my printed timeline. Then I opened my notes app and wrote 1 sentence in all caps, "Do not react document." I made tea, I didn't drink, stared at the navy dress hanging on the closet door, and realized Patricia wanted a scene, not a solution. So I built a plan that could survive tears, yelling, charm, and family loyalty. Marlene called at 7:12 p.m. The time stamped in my call log and told me to stop thinking like a daughter and start thinking like a client. She had already drafted 2 letters, one to Bay State demanding preservation of all digital records, and one to Harbor Notary requiring the journal entry and camera footage be retained. I printed them, signed with a firm hand, and scanned them back as PDFs. While the printer hummed, I froze my credit at all 3 bureaus and set a fraud alert. My phone chimed with confirmations like tiny shields. I stayed steady at work. Lucas came by after work carrying a grocery bag and his laptop like we were doing a normal weeknight. He set down 2 salads, then asked to see the documents. He didn't flinch, didn't gasp, just built a folder structure on my drive, bank mail, notary audio timeline. He insisted on backups, so we copied everything to an external SSD and to a cloud folder with a password he didn't know. Then he made me rehearse. He played Patricia complete with the sweet voice, and I practiced answering without pleading. Each time throat tightened, he said, "Slower facts first, breathe." At the office, I acted like my promotion was the only thing happening. I hosted a project kickoff, smiled on camera, and talked deadlines while my stomach rolled. Between meetings, I pulled my full credit report and printed the inquiries page, highlighting the title company line in neon yellow. I called that title company and asked whether any file existed under my name. The woman hesitated, then said, "There's a preliminary order." The phrase chilled me. A preliminary order meant someone was reaching for my deed. I scheduled an appointment for morning and told no one. Stayed steady at work. Friday morning, I sat across from a title officer, Denise, who wore reading glasses on a chain. She slid a file toward me and checked my ID twice, which told me she understood the stakes. The file held a draft deed transfer, a quitclaim not recorded yet listing me as grantor and a family trust as grantee. I felt my face heat. "That's not my trust," I said. Denise nodded. "We haven't finalized," she replied, "because your signature didn't match prior closings." I exhaled, grateful for bureaucracy, and asked who delivered it. Denise looked down. "Patricia." Throat went suddenly dry. On the drive back, I kept my eyes on road and my emotions in a locked box. I wanted to call my father and ask why he let her touch my paperwork, but questions were for later. Right now, I needed containment. I stopped at a gas station, bought a notebook, and wrote a timeline with times, dates, and names. I added Denise as a witness and title company as a location. Then I opened the courthouse website and studied deed recording in my county. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was learning the system she hoped I'd never see again. Bay State's fraud specialist, a man named Raymond, agreed to a verification call the day of the dinner. He explained that someone tried to bypass my credit freeze by submitting paper documents, which still triggers manual review. They're counting on speed and embarrassment, he said. If you complain loudly in a lobby, people leave. I laughed because that was Patricia's playbook in 2 sentences. Raymond gave me a case ID and told me to keep it visible like a badge. I saved it as my wallpaper. If Patricia wanted a performance, I'd show her a number that couldn't be gaslit tonight. The rehearsal got ugly on purpose. Lucas played Patricia and pushed every button she'd installed in me. You should be grateful, he said, then switched to, after all I sacrificed. Then to, you're unstable, you need help. Each line made heat climb my neck, and I forced myself to answer like I was speaking to a judge. This isn't about feelings, I said. This is about forged documents and diverted mail. Lucas nodded. Good. Say it slower. We practiced pauses because silence makes liars fill space. By the end, my voice stopped shaking. It felt like learning a language, self-respect. On the morning of the dinner, I did chores to keep my brain from spiraling. I answered emails, scheduled a dentist appointment, and picked up dry cleaning. At home, I laid out my dress, heels, and a cardigan because the air conditioning is ruthless. I charged my phone, packed a backup charger, and tucked a note inside my clutch, breathe, then speak. Before leaving, I checked my ring history because Patricia once tried to drop gifts when I wasn't home. Nothing new. I locked the door and pictured the laptop strap around my ankle, a reminder to stay in control. When I arrived, the valet took my keys and handed me a claim ticket like my life was a coat. I walked in with my shoulders back and my stomach quiet. The room glittered with glass and views. Patricia had positioned me in a chair center of a U-shaped table. I spotted the microphone stand by the windows reserved without my input. Jenna hovered near it, testing angles. My father shook my hand and looked away. I greeted coworkers, then set my gaze on Patricia. I wasn't here to plead. I was here to document. Let her talk first. Patricia waited until plates were cleared because she liked a clean backdrop for cruelty. She rose, tapped the mic, and smiled like a charity chairwoman. We're here to celebrate Myra, she began, and people clapped on reflex. Then her tone shifted into that syrupy confession voice. My father's shoulders rounded. Jenna lifted her phone. Under the table, my fingers touched the plastic sleeve. The case ID glowed on my lock screen. Patricia paused, eyes shining. 38 years ago, she said, we made a decision that changed our finances. A few guests laughed. I didn't. I hit record. And I watched. While Patricia soaked up attention, my phone vibrated once in my palm. Raymond's text was short. Hold. We found something. My heart thumped, but my face stayed blank. Patricia leaned toward the mic, ready for the punchline meant to brand me as a charity case. I kept my posture open the way Marlene taught me and let her words land without flinching. The hard drive pressed against my knee like a promise. Then the club doors opened. A woman in a blazer stepped in, scanning the room. Her gaze locked on me. A notary stamp swung from her neck quietly. The woman in the blazer didn't belong to Patricia's guest list. She moved with purpose, not curiosity, scanning the room like she was looking for an exit and a liar. The metal badge at her waist caught the chandelier light, and the notary stamp hanging from a lanyard bounced against her chest. Patricia's voice faltered for half a beat, then recovered. Jenna's phone tilted toward the newcomer, hungry. I didn't wave. I simply unlocked my phone and let Raymond's text sit there. Hold. We found something. I breathed and reminded myself witnesses are shields if I keep voice calm tonight always. 3 days earlier, I'd visited Harbor Notary Services again, this time without pretending. I wore my work blazer, carried Marlene's letter, and asked for the journal entry tied to stamp 44178. The receptionist's smile froze as soon as she saw the stamp number. We can't release logs, she said rehearsed. I nodded and asked for the supervisor. A man appeared, slick hair, polite eyes. He repeated the policy, then added quietly, Your stepmother came in with documents for a loan. He said it like a warning, not a confession. Behind him, the hallway camera blinked. I left before anger showed. Marlene moved fast. By noon, she had a preservation notice, emailed, faxed, and hand-delivered to the notary office and the bank. She told me the goal wasn't to win an argument. It was to prevent the evidence from vanishing. People like Patricia love to rewrite the record, she said. So we freeze it. She also filed an emergency request for the notary journal and any surveillance footage covering the timestamp on the stamp. When I asked if that was enough, she answered, "Enough to make them panic, yes." That was the point. Panic makes sloppy moves and moves leave fingerprints. Raymond called me Friday night, voice lower than usual. The paper authorization came with an ID copy, he said. Not yours. The scan showed a driver's license with my name typed under a photo that wasn't me, a cheap composite anyone could buy online. But the clerk had stapled it, initialed it, and added a note, delivered by P. Anderson. Raymond paused. Your stepmother didn't just forge a signature. She tried to create a whole you. I felt cold all over because that meant planning, not impulse. I saved it and stared at reflection when she decided I was replaceable. At the Harbor Club, Patricia kept talking, building her narrative brick by brick. We welcomed Myra into our home, she said, hand on heart. We treated her like our own. The notary woman stopped near the bar watching. I caught her eye and gave the smallest nod toward my phone where Raymond's case ID glowed. She walked closer, stopped behind Patricia's chair, and waited. Patricia noticed and tightened her smile. Is there a problem? She asked the room like she owned it. The woman answered, Yes. A legal one. Conversation died. Jenna's camera wobbled. My father looked up, confused, afraid. She introduced herself as Lila Carver, compliance officer contracted by Bay State's fraud team. She wasn't a cop, but she had the posture of someone who writes reports that ruin weekends. Anderson requested verification regarding Notarial Act linked to stamp 44178, she said. We're here to preserve testimony. Patricia laughed brittle. This is my stepdaughter's promotion dinner. Lila didn't blink. Then it's an excellent time to confirm whether a notary witnessed a signature or just a story. She looked at Jenna's phone. Keep recording. It helps. Patricia flushed, guests shifted, and my spine straightened like a lock clicking. Lila asked Patricia for her ID politely the way an auditor asks for receipts. Patricia clutched the microphone. This is harassment, she said, glancing at my father for backup. He said nothing. Lila continued anyway. The notary journal is a public record for these purposes. The entry lists who appeared, what document, what ID was presented, and where. Patricia's eyes flicked toward the exit. I spoke for the first time since Lila arrived. I have the forwarded mail form and the paper authorization. Same stamp, same week. Explain that, Patricia. My voice stayed level, but hands shook under the tablecloth. Patricia tried to regain the stage. She's always been emotional, she told the guests. That's why we had to take her in. The word in made me taste metal. Lila held out her hand. May I see the documents? I slid the plastic sleeve across the table like a file in a conference room. Lila reviewed the stamp, the dates, the handwriting on the forwarding form. She turned it so the closest guest could read Patricia's name. A man near the window whispered, That's mail fraud. Jenna's camera zoomed by instinct. My father's mouth opened, then shut, ashamed to speak. Lila lifted her gaze. Bay State also received an ID copy with this authorization, she said. It is not Myra's. Patricia's face went pale, then bright red, the way people change colors when their story collapses. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's trying to ruin my reputation. Lila's tone stayed flat. Ma'am, the camera at Harbor Notary captured who walked in and who signed. We are preserving that footage tonight. Patricia's hand trembled on the microphone. We can discuss this privately, she hissed at me. I smiled without warmth. No. Across the room, manager approached, whispering police were on their way. Jenna's panic arrived a second later. She fumbled with her phone, thumb jabbing at the screen, trying to stop the recording. Patricia snapped, Turn it off, too loud, too late. Lila stepped closer to Jenna, calm as winter. Do not delete anything, she said. Destruction of evidence becomes its own charge. Jenna froze, eyes glossy. My coworkers stared like they'd never met my family, which honestly they hadn't. Patricia tried to laugh again, but the sound broke. Myra, please, she whispered, using my name like a leash. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I let silence do the damage today. My father stood so suddenly, his chair scraped the floor. Every head turned as if the room remembered he existed. Pat, he said, voice raw. You need to stop talking. Patricia stared at him, betrayed. Richard, don't you dare, she hissed. He swallowed hard. I saw the forwarding forms, he admitted. I saw the bank folder on your desk. A ripple of shock moved through the guests, not because they loved me, but because truth makes people uncomfortable. Lila nodded once as if logging his statement. Patricia's mouth opened, then she looked toward the exit again, calculating distance in heels. The manager returned pale and leaned to Lila's ear. She nodded, then addressed the room. "Officers are downstairs. They want to speak with Miss Anderson and anyone who handled the paperwork." Patricia's breath hitched. For the first time, her mask slipped, and I saw fear, not anger. She stepped back, scanning for allies. Jenna's hands shook. Her phone blurred. I reached under the table, not for documents, but for my keys. Not to leave. To remind myself I was in charge. Patricia turned toward the corridor. At that exact moment, the harbor notary walked in, and my stepmother's smile vanished. The harbor notary walked in with a tote bag and the kind of tired face that says, "I did not plan to be here." Her eyes went straight to Lila's badge, then to Patricia, then to me. Patricia's lips parted, and for a second she looked like she might faint. The notary, a woman in her late 50s named Carol, set her bag down and said, "I was told there's a question about my journal." Her voice was clipped, professional, and scared. Jenna zoomed in like she could capture guilt. My palms were damp, but my posture stayed perfectly still. Lila didn't let the room breathe. She asked Carol to state on record who appeared before her on Tuesday at 2:14 p.m. Carol hesitated, glancing at Patricia, as if looking for permission, then corrected herself, eyes dropping to the table. "I can only speak from my entries," she said. Patricia snapped, "This is a family matter." Lila replied, "It's a financial crime investigation." Carol opened a small notebook and flipped to a page with stamp 44178. Patricia Anderson, she read, appeared with documents and an ID. She did not appear with Myra Anderson, and she did not witness any signing. A collective inhale swept the table. Patricia tried to smile through it the way you smile when a cashier says your card declined. "Carol, you must be confused," she said. "Myra asked me to help her with paperwork. She gets overwhelmed." I leaned forward and kept my voice soft. "If I asked you to help Patricia, why did you divert my mail?" Her eyes flashed, then went watery. "Because you can't manage life," she hissed. That was the first honest sentence she'd ever said. Across from me, my coworker Dana whispered, "Oh my God," and slid her phone away quietly. Lila held up the photocopied license Bay State received. The photo was a stranger with my name printed beneath it like a bad Halloween costume. "Did you provide this ID?" Lila asked Carol. Carol shook her head. "That's not what I wrote down," she said, and read the journal line aloud. "Massachusetts driver's license number ending 3021 issued to Patricia Anderson." Patricia's breath caught. Jenna's face went blank as if someone had shut off her ring light. "Mom," she whispered. Patricia snapped. "Stop recording," but Jenna couldn't move. The room finally understood this wasn't about feelings. It was about theft now. Two uniformed officers appeared at the doorway, followed by the club manager with a strained smile. Their presence made the chandeliers feel colder. Patricia's eyes darted to the windows, then to the hallway. She took one step back. Lila spoke first, steady. "Officers, this is Myra Anderson. We have an active fraud case tied to stamp 44178 and the notary is present." Patricia forced a laugh. "This is ridiculous." My father flinched. One officer asked Patricia to come downstairs to answer questions. Patricia clutched her purse like it was a life vest. Around us, forks rested and nobody chewed anymore. Patricia turned to my father, pleading without looking at him. "Richard, tell them," she said. "Tell them she's unstable. She can't handle money." My father's mouth worked silently. He looked at the officers, then at me, then at the notary journal on the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than I remembered. "She didn't do this," he said, meaning me. "Pat did." Patricia's face hardened. "You ungrateful coward," she spat. The word coward landed like a confession. I didn't smile. I just slid my phone forward so the officer could see Raymond's case ID and the timestamp. The taller officer asked me to confirm my address and whether I had authorized any loan. I answered cleanly. "No," I said, and a title company opened a preliminary order under my name this week. That turned heads. Patricia tried to cut in. "She's exaggerating," she snapped. Lila lifted a finger. "Do not interrupt," she said. The officer faced Patricia. "We'll need your phone and any paperwork connected to this," he added. Jenna clutched her own phone like it could protect her. My father sat down, hard shoulders collapsing. I kept my hands visible on the table, refusing to tremble. Patricia stood as if motion could erase evidence. "I'm calling my attorney," she declared. The shorter officer stepped in front of her without touching her. "You're not under arrest," he said, "but you need to provide ID and stay available." Patricia's eyes flicked at the words "not under arrest" like she heard the unspoken yet. She turned to the guests. You all know me, she pleaded. A garden club friend stared at her napkin. Someone whispered forgery. Jenna's voice cracked. Mom, please. Patricia didn't look at her. She looked at the exit, measuring the distance like a plan that still failed. I turned to the guests because Patricia had invited them as a jury. I came to celebrate a promotion I earned, I said. Instead, my mail was diverted, my identity used, and my property targeted. I nodded toward the officers. That isn't family drama. That's fraud. The words settled over the table like dust. A few people exhaled, grateful for clarity. Dana, my coworker, met my eyes and nodded once. The manager hovered near the door, pale. Jenna's camera lowered, and her expression finally looked like shame instead of entertainment. I refused to apologize for protecting myself with witnesses present. The officers asked me to email copies to a secure address. I did it, fingers steady. Lila watched the send confirmation like it was a heartbeat. Then the taller officer turned to Patricia. Ma'am, we're going to step outside, he said. Patricia lifted her chin. Misunderstanding, she repeated. Behind the glass, their voices dropped into murmur. Jenna sat frozen phone, clutched in both hands. I leaned toward her. You knew, I said. Her lips trembled. I thought it was just a loan, she whispered. That word made my stomach twist. A loan is theft when it wears your name, too. My father stared at the tablecloth. Dad, I said you don't have to pick her anymore. He flinched, then nodded once. The doors opened, and Patricia returned with the officer's jaw clenched. She found me and mouthed, You did this. I held her gaze and said nothing. The officers took Carol's contact information and wrote down the journal entry number. Lila promised me the preserved footage within 24 hours. Guests whispered. Then my phone buzzed from the unknown number again. They didn't tell you the worst part. I opened the thread and my stomach dropped when I recognized the sender. The name on my screen wasn't a stranger. It was Denise, the title officer. Her text was time-stamped 10 minutes ago. Myra, I'm sorry, it said. Someone rushed a recording at the courthouse. Your condo deed shows a pending transfer to the Anderson Family Trust. My throat went dry, not from emotion, from arithmetic. Patricia was still insisting on a misunderstanding while the real damage moved ahead. I showed Lila the text. Her eyes narrowed. Marlene appeared at my shoulder and read it once. She didn't frown. She just said, We go now. And that's when Patricia finally ran outside. Denise's text hit me like ice under warm lights suddenly. My condo deed was moving while Patricia played innocent upstairs. Lila read the message, then looked at me silent too. Marlene squeezed my elbow and whispered, We stop recording now. I stood, apologized to no one, and grabbed my laptop. Guests stared, but I didn't owe them an explanation tonight. The officers followed because the fraud had shifted locations already. Patricia tried to block me, but Lila stepped between us. Jenna trailed behind mascara, streaking, clutching her phone hard quietly. My father stayed seated, staring at his hands, trembling alone. Outside, the wind slapped my cheeks and cleared my head. Marlene was already dialing the courthouse clerk on speaker again. Lila called Raymond, asking for an emergency hold on transfers. I opened Denise's file photo, zooming on the trust name. It matched Patricia's favorite phrase, Anderson Family Trust established recently. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed flat and usable. We go now, Marlene, repeated like a judge reading orders. One officer asked if I wanted to press charges immediately. I said yes, because waiting had been my lifelong mistake. Patricia's heels clicked behind us, then stopped, then fled fast. We drove in 2 cars, Lucas following as my witness. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, breathing measured steadily. At every red light, I checked my email for updates. Marlene texted Denise demanding the recording number and timestamp now. Lila forwarded the fraud case to a detective on call. I felt strangely calm, like my body had chosen clarity. For years, Patricia's insults made me shrink without even noticing. Now, each insult sounded like evidence, not a verdict anymore. Lucas called from behind, reminding me to keep copies separate. I told him I had 3 backups and 1 binder. The courthouse lobby smelled like paper coffee and old dust. A clerk behind glass looked bored until Marlene spoke firmly. She presented my ID, my deed, and Denise's urgent message. The clerk typed, frowned, and asked for the recording reference. Marlene slid a note forward with the pending transfer number. The clerk's posture changed like someone finally woke up here. He said, It posted this afternoon, but it's not finalized. My chest loosened fraction, then tightened at the next line. Someone filed an emergency correction request, he added, glancing up. I asked who, and he said Anderson Family Trust Council. Marlene's eyes narrowed. She demanded the submission packet immediately, please. The clerk printed pages, stapled them, and slid them out. On top was an email chain forwarded from a lender. The sender line made my throat close Patricia's personal account. The subject read, "She won't notice. She's desperate to belong. Heat rose, but I refuse to give it oxygen today." Lucas whispered, "That's the line she used on you forever." I swallowed, remembering every dinner where I begged for space. Now her cruelty sat in black text, time-stamped and routed. Marlene said, "This is intent, and intent changes everything legally." We returned to the club because my name was bleeding. Inside, guests still hovered, hungry for an ending in gossip. Patricia stood near the bar, talking fast, pretending concern again. Jenna tried to edit her clip, fingers shaking on glass. My father sat alone, eyes red, staring at water rings. Lila walked straight to the manager and asked for privacy. Marlene held up the clerk's packet and called everyone back. Patricia lifted her chin to spin, but her lips trembled. I took the microphone gently like a tool in hand. Then I read Patricia's subject line aloud, word for word. A hush fell, so I heard ice clink in glasses. Patricia lunged forward, whispering my name like a warning now. I stepped back and kept my voice calm, almost bored. "You wrote this," I said, holding the packet toward lights. She stammered about misunderstandings, about stress, about protecting family always. Lila asked, "Did you divert her mail, yes or no?" Patricia opened her mouth, then glanced at my father, pleading. My father said, "Answer," and his voice did not shake. Patricia's shoulders dropped the way liars drop when cornered publicly. She whispered, "I was trying to save us," and laughed. "Save yourself," I corrected, "and you used my identity to—" I showed the forwarding form, her handwriting beside my name. Then I showed the title packet with her email headers. Guests leaned in, reading, realizing this wasn't gossip anymore either. Jenna's phone slipped from her fingers onto the carpeted floor. Someone gasped. Someone muttered felony, and a chair scraped back. Patricia's friend from the garden club stepped away, disgusted quietly. I watched Patricia's eyes search for sympathy and find none. My voice stayed measured. This is why I froze everything. Lila nodded and told the room, "The bank will pursue." Patricia tried one last tactic, pointing at me with tears. "She's ungrateful," she said. "I raised her when nobody would." Answered, "You didn't raise me. You managed me for profit." My father stood beside me, not touching, but present finally. He said, "This ends tonight, Pat," and she flinched hard. Marlene told Patricia all contact must go through counsel now. Patricia's jaw tightened. She whispered, "You think you won here." I replied, "I think you're caught, and I'm done begging." The officer returned with paperwork and asked Patricia to sign. She refused, then hesitated when he mentioned a warrant option. As she stalled, my phone buzzed with email from Denise. It attached a PDF titled, "Trust Documents Beneficiary Clarification Urgent." My stomach sank because the trust wasn't just about property. It was about control, guardianship, language about declaring me incompetent. I stared at the PDF's page, seeing my name bold. The phrase temporary conservatorship appeared beside Patricia's signature block, too. Marlene leaned in, eyes hard, and whispered, "That's the plan." My father read the header and went pale like paper. Patricia saw our faces and suddenly stopped arguing with officers. She bolted toward the door, but this time I followed, not to beg, not to plead, but to set terms. In the hallway under harsh lights, she hissed my nickname. I held up the conservatorship page and asked, "Explain this." Her eyes flashed, then softened into the practiced victim mask. "You need help," she said, "and I'm the only one." I replied, "I needed protection and you signed to steal." She reached for my arm and I stepped back disgusted. Behind us, Jenna sobbed quietly, repeating, "I didn't know, Mom." I told Jenna, "Knowing starts when you stop filming people." She nodded, wiping cheeks, and dropped the phone into purse. Lila approached with the officers holding an evidence bag open. Patricia's face tightened. She realized the night wasn't hers anymore. Marlene told her, "You will not contact Myra without counsel." Patricia whispered, "This isn't over," and I answered, "Correct yet," because the conservatorship petition had a hearing date printed below. It was scheduled for Monday, 3 days away from now. My father looked at me terrified and finally asked forgiveness. I said, "Later," because survival required priorities, not nostalgia tonight. As Patricia was escorted downstairs, she stared at me promising, and I realized the next battle wouldn't be at dinner. Monday was 3 days away, and Patricia's petition sat on my screen like a threat. Temporary conservatorship. Incompetent. Emergency hearing. I slept 2 hours, woke before dawn, and stared at the courthouse notice again. My promotion dinner had turned into an evidence drop, but this was bigger. This was her attempt to take my voice legally before the week began. Marlene met me Sunday morning in her office, hair pulled back, coffee untouched. She slid a binder across the desk and said, "We answer fast and clean." Inside were exhibits labeled with dates, stamps, and screenshots. She had drafted an emergency response, a motion to dismiss, and a request for sanctions. She looked tired but sharp, built for court today. Lucas drove me to the title company to collect certified copies. Denise handed Marlene a packet stamped received, and she apologized for texting so late. They tried to rush recording, she said, but our clerk flagged inconsistencies. She pointed to the trust paperwork. It listed Patricia as trustee and my father as co-trustee without his signature. That detail mattered. My father met us afterward at a quiet diner, the kind with cracked booths and burnt coffee. He looked smaller than he had at the club. He kept rubbing his wedding ring like it was stuck. "I never agreed to any trust," he said. Marlene slid the documents toward him. His hands shook, then he whispered, "She forged mine too." Jenna called me that afternoon, voice thin, asking if I was alone. We met in a pharmacy parking lot. She climbed into my passenger seat and handed me her phone. I backed up the raw file, she said, not the edited clip. Her eyes filled. Mom told me it was protection. I didn't know about court until the notice appeared. Back at Marlene's office, we exported Jenna's recording and pulled the audio clean. It captured Patricia admitting she diverted my mail and signed paperwork for me right before the officers arrived. It also showed my calm refusal to argue. Marlene smiled once, brief and satisfied. "Judges like timelines," she said, "and they dislike theatrics." I thought of Patricia's microphone still. Sunday evening, I sat with my purchase folder open. Deed closing disclosures and signature pages were stacked like armor. I compared them to Patricia's forged version and circled the differences. Then I found scans of my birth certificate and social security card in my father's tax binder. Patricia had been collecting my identity for years. My anger turned cold. Monday morning arrived gray and sharp. Marlene met me at the courthouse steps with a rolling briefcase and a bottle of water. Lila stood nearby, ready to testify about the bank's findings. My father arrived alone, eyes red, holding a signed statement. Jenna waited in the car, and I kept my focus on the doors ahead like gates to safety. In the courtroom, Patricia sat with a lawyer, eyes swollen but chin high. She wore pearls as if virtue could be accessorized. When the judge entered, Patricia sniffed and dabbed at nothing. Her attorney claimed I was financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable, and that conservatorship was for my protection. I listened without reacting. Marlene rose and said, "We have exhibits." First, Lila testified that a HELOC application was initiated under my name using diverted mail and forged authorization. She explained the case ID, the identification, and the process that stopped funding. The judge asked Patricia's attorney if he disputed the bank's documentation. He hesitated, then said he had not reviewed it yet. The judge's eyebrow lifted and the air changed. Then Marlene played Jenna's raw recording. Patricia's voice filled the courtroom, admitting she handled my mail that I wouldn't notice and that she signed to keep things moving. My stomach clenched, hearing it under fluorescent lights, but the judge stayed expressionless. Patricia's lawyer objected, calling it prejudicial. Marlene replied, "It is a confession." The objection died mid-sentence in court. My father testified, next voice cracking. He said he never agreed to the trust, never authorized any transfer, and never asked Patricia to manage my finances. He admitted he had stayed silent for years because conflict terrified him. The judge looked at him, then at Patricia, and asked a simple question. "Why did you file this petition today?" Patricia blinked. Patricia stood and delivered her final performance. She claimed she loved me, feared I would waste everything, and believed she was saving the family. She never said saving me. Her lawyer tried to frame it as concern, not control. Marlene asked permission to introduce the packet. The judge nodded. I watched Patricia's shoulders tense when the email header appeared above. The subject line glowed in black letters. "She won't notice she's desperate to belong." Under it were routing lines, timestamps, and Patricia's signature block. Marlene asked if Patricia recognized the email address. Patricia said no. Then Marlene produced the forwarding form with Patricia's handwriting and asked the judge to compare it. The judge did slowly, and Patricia's denial shrank today. The ruling came fast. The judge denied the conservatorship petition and issued a protective order. Patricia was to have no contact with me, no access to my accounts, and no authority to act on my behalf. He ordered the trust filings referred to the district attorney for review. Patricia's lawyer whispered urgently, but the judge was done. My throat loosened. Outside the courtroom, Patricia finally looked at me without an audience. Her eyes were bright with rage and something like panic. "You're ruining everything," she whispered. I answered quietly, "You tried to erase me on paper." Marlene stepped between us and reminded Patricia of the order. An officer guided her away. Jenna watched from the hallway, shaking and silent today. My father and I stood on the courthouse steps in the cold, neither of us sure what came next. He tried to apologize again. I held up a hand. "I hear you," I said, "but trust is a process, not a speech." He nodded, eyes wet, and promised to sign whatever was needed to undo the trust filings that afternoon. Back home, I changed my locks and updated every account password again, even the ones I thought were safe. I called Bay State to confirm the HELOC was closed and placed a word on my profile. I emailed Denise the court order and she replied within minutes she would file a corrective affidavit. My phone stopped buzzing. The silence felt unfamiliar. That night, Marlene sent me one more email marked urgent. She had located another filing. Patricia attempted a request to access my medical records attached to the same forged POA. The order blocked it, but the attempt would be added to the criminal referral. I stared at the screen, realizing Patricia's plan was never just money. It was control anymore. I wrote a new list on paper: boundaries, locks, attorneys, witnesses. Then I added one rule in ink: I will not negotiate my reality with people who profit from my doubt. My doorbell camera sent an alert. Someone stood outside my building hood up, staring at my door. The silhouette was familiar. The screen sharpened. It was Patricia after midnight. The doorbell alert jolted me upright on my couch. On the screen, Patricia stood under the hallway, light hood up, lips pressed tight as if the protective order was a suggestion. My hands didn't shake this time. I hit record, then called the non-emergency line and read the case number like a password. While I waited, I spoke through the intercom, calm and loud enough for the camera. "Patricia, you are not allowed here. Leave now." She stared at the lens, then turned away, walking fast, heels silent on carpet. I watched her shadow vanish, then locked the deadbolt again. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes, not rushing but serious. I met them in the lobby with my phone open to the footage and the signed order in my email. They watched Patricia's face on the recording, heard my warning, and nodded. One officer wrote notes, while the other asked if I wanted a formal report. "Yes," I said, because I was done minimizing. They called Patricia's number from their cruiser, leaving a message that any return would trigger arrest. When they left, the hallway felt brighter, like the building finally belonged to me. I slept with keys beside me. In the morning, I didn't replay the clip. I acted. I changed the locks, updated my door code, and asked management to add Patricia's name to a no-entry list. I opened a new P.O. box under my work address, then filed a complaint with USPS about the fraudulent forwarding request. Marlene helped me submit a corrective affidavit to the registry and a notice of dispute to the title company. Bay State confirmed the HELOC was closed, and I added a verbal passphrase to my profile. For the first time, my life had friction for predators, and that felt like peace. At work, I told my boss the truth in one sentence: identity theft, active case, and a protective order. I didn't overshare. I asked for one accommodation route, any unexpected financial calls through HR and our legal team. My boss nodded and said, "Handled." The relief surprised me. I had spent years assuming people would side with Patricia's charm, but grown adults respect paperwork more than performances. Dana pulled me aside and whispered she was proud of how steady I stayed. I thanked her and returned to my desk, finishing a budget revision like I still owned my future today, too. That weekend, my father asked to meet at a small cafe far from Patricia's circles. He arrived early, hands wrapped around a paper cup, eyes rimmed red. He didn't ask me to forgive. He said I chose quiet over you, and the honesty hit harder than tears. I told him the rules: no private conversations with Patricia about me, no sharing my address, no signing anything without Marlene. If he wanted a relationship, it would be slow, consistent, and boring. He nodded like someone learning a new language and slid a notarized statement across the table. "I'm done," he said. Jenna texted the next day, "Can we talk?" We met in a public park. She looked smaller without an audience, hands twisting her sleeve. She didn't apologize well. She tried to explain, then blame, then bargain. I let the silence work. Finally, she said, "I liked filming because it made me feel powerful." I answered, "Then learn a better kind of power." She handed me a USB with the raw video. I set terms: no contact with Patricia around me, no posting about my life and therapy before any restart. She nodded, swallowing hard. That was the first honest step. Once the fires were out, I rebuilt my routines on purpose. I stopped checking my credit report every hour and set one weekly reminder. I met with a financial planner not because I was reckless, but because knowledge is insulation. I updated beneficiaries, created a simple trust, and filed everything in labeled folders like Quiet Rebellion. On weeknights, I cooked dinners, played music, and let the apartment feel lived in, not guarded. I bought a plant and didn't worry it would die. I felt safe inside my own name. I needed my story to point outward, not just inward. Marlene suggested a victim advocate group, and I attended one meeting, listening more than talking. Afterward, a woman my age said, "You sounded like you believed yourself." That became my goal. I began volunteering one Saturday a month with a local program that helps teens aging out of foster care build credit and find housing. I didn't frame it as charity. I framed it as competence, the thing I had to teach myself. Watching those kids ask questions reminded me belonging is a skill, not a prize. I practiced daily. The legal pieces moved without me watching every second. The district attorney's office opened a review, and Bay State confirmed they would cooperate with prosecution. The title office recorded a corrective affidavit and halted any transfer under the trust. Patricia's lawyer sent one final email asking for a family resolution, and Marlene replied with the court order attached. After that silence, Patricia stopped showing up at my door. Word traveled through her club faster than apologies, and invitations dried up. Jenna said Patricia blamed me to anyone who would listen, but fewer people were listening. Consequences shrink in ego, eventually always. 6 months later, my promotion still mattered, not because of the title, but because I refused to let Patricia turn it into shame. My father and I met for coffee and spoke in small, honest pieces. Jenna stayed in therapy and kept her distance. I watched for consistency, not promises. I kept the protective order active and my boundaries simple. When holidays came, I chose friends, quiet meals, and early nights. I no longer auditioned for belonging at a table that charged me interest. I built my own. If you're watching and you've drawn lines with family, you're not alone. A week after the hearing, Patricia tried a new route, a handwritten card delivered through my father full of apologies that never named the crimes. I handed it back unopened. "Tell her the order includes messages," I said, and my father didn't argue. He asked what I needed, and I answered with one word: consistency. He began sending me copies of statements, volunteering transparency for the first time. It didn't erase the past, but it marked a shift. I stopped craving a perfect family story and started valuing the truth. People change only when they stop benefiting from your silence. When I finally unpacked my laptop bag, the strap marks had faded, but the lesson stayed. I lit a candle, opened my calendar, and scheduled ordinary things: a dentist, cleaning a grocery run, a weekend hike, no crisis appointments. I replayed the start of this mess and saw the difference. I used to hope kindness would earn me safety. Now I build safety with passwords, paperwork, and people who show up. The promotion dinner didn't ruin me. It revealed me. The woman who tried to make me disappear learned one truth too: I belong to myself first. I choose peace,